Here's the thing. Roland is completely unenthusiastic until the camera actually starts recording. He's like, "You're not paying me enough to be funny before anyone's watching."
Hey, JM, do I need to be creative again? Or can we just get over with it?
Can we get over with it, my friend? Yes, we're going to get over with it and make ourselves record a podcast today.
Welcome to the What's Your Baseline podcast, where we demystify enterprise architecture and business process management.
We're here to bring best practices and lessons learned from our years to your ears, as well as interviewing friends we've met along the way on our professional journeys.
My name is Roland Volt, and I'm joined today by my co-host, JM Erlinson.
Hey, JM, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Roland. My goodness. It's a time of year I like. I think I've talked to our fans about this before, but I really like the fall. But guess what? The opposite fall, which is spring, is also pretty fun for me. I kind of like it always around the same temperature. So if I can get it to be a little bit cool, a little bit warm, the kind of temperature you can walk around for a couple hours and not get sweaty, big win for me. How have you been doing, my friend?
Well, I have so many questions. For example, why do you have that 2-second artistic pause before you answered my question? And the second thing is, it's a mixed bag these days, So
Okay.
I don't know if I should talk too much about me, but for those of you who need to get projects done or want to chat with me, keep it coming.
Yeah. I've thoroughly enjoyed working with Roland in the past, and I suspect that many of you would enjoy that as well. So it's a good opportunity for you to reach out to Roland and to email us here at hello@whatsyourbaseline.com, because of course we can respond to some text as well. Let us know what you like and what you want in future episodes, but we'll put that call to action at the end. But we'd like to record a podcast episode first. So Roland, we've brought in somebody that you got in touch with, someone you found. Tell us a little bit about what you're excited about for today's episode and guests.
Oh, it's one of my preferred topics that we're going to talk about. In the widest sense, we're talking about org change management. And as you know, and I don't want to repeat it to the nth time, my opinion is if you don't pick up the people where they are and you bring them along on the ride, then nothing gets done. Right? You can implement as many products you like and whatever. It's not worth it. You need to get the people with you, right? And with that, I'm super happy to have Neelesh Harmalker on the show, one of my LinkedIn friends, and we chatted and we quickly came to this topic, and it took him about, I don't know, it took you 3 milliseconds to say yes to the podcast, JM. I think it took me less time to say yes to this episode. So, Neelesh, hey, we're happy to have you. Welcome to What's Your Baseline?
Nope, and thank you for having me. Appreciate everyone's time here. So my name is Neelesh. I'm spent my career in operational excellence. I've seen everything from massive transformation changes to very specific process improvements across multiple industries, finance, high tech, pharma, things like that. So very excited to talk about org change management in general, and how we can add more value to the change.
Perfect. Yeah, and maybe before we get started, let's talk a little bit about you. I heard you're what we would call in German a straw widower these days, straw widower, which is basically when your wife is on a business trip and you have to herd, the guys at home. I heard you're in the same situation, but maybe you can talk a little bit more about you, except that we know that you're married.
Yeah, so I live in sunny San Diego, in California, so Southern California. It's awesome. So I grew up on the East Coast, born and raised, spent a lot of time in New York, New Jersey. A lot of it I do not miss. I've got nice 72-degree weather, except, a little bit here and there. It's a little hot, but not too bad. I am married. I have a 5-year-old son who is amazing, smart. He's at the age where he is questioning everything. It is the why. Why does this? Why does that? And interesting enough, is he does not like fiction, movies, or books. He is very much into the oceanography, the ocean explorers, how do polar bears live, how do rocks turn into minerals? And then he has questions on that. And then I got to figure out, I got to do my homework at night to answer those.
JM,
He's learning
I
about the
think
world
we have,
around him. I dig that.
yeah, JM, we have a guest for our next episode because these are all questions that I'm interested in as
Ah.
well.
Well, it's actually something I've been trying to work on, which is like, how do you explain to younger people the kinds of things we talk about every day at work? Perhaps not quite so detail oriented, maybe like in more general terms, but give them a sense of like, what's our purpose in life? Like, why do we get to push paper and get paid for it? And I think that's cool. To you doing research and explaining to your son sort of the world
Yep.
around him. Did you ever talk about work with him?
He knows us about, when my wife and I go to work, it's about work friends or we're hanging out with, our work people. Doesn't fully, he's always asked us, why do you work? That's a very
Very good question.
question that we ask
It's an
ourselves
existential question.
a lot. But he is very interested in more of the real things. He could not name you a Disney character except the big ones, Mickey, Minnie, etc. He could tell you everything about how lava turns into obsidian rock or pumice. So he's that kind of kid.
I'm glad to hear a little bit more about you, and I think our audience is too. But let's shift today into the topic where it's a hand. Organizational change management, leading and leadership through change. And I think the first question that we always have is that change is inevitable, right? So when you're dealing with the change challenges that come up, the first thing that everyone talks about is resistance to change. Because the only thing that is consistent is that things are going to change. That's the impermanence of the world. Why do people resist change so much, particularly change in their organization and in the working situation that you have? Because it can't possibly stay the same. So what's that motivation?
No, it's a great place to start. From what I've seen is a lot of organizations think of change as a task or something to do.
Hmm.
What they don't really think through is it actually impacts, it has real impact. It's not just we have to move to a new system or we have to change the way we're doing things. But when you can't talk about in a very clear and concise manner of why this is important, why the person on the ground doing the work needs to be part of this, what is going to affect them, why, how, when those messages aren't clear, it becomes an almost instant detractor, resistance, a barrier. I think the biggest thing and I've seen in my, 15 plus year in management, strategy management consulting is many companies don't have a change muscle. They think of it as, hey, I have a change. I'm doing a process change. I'm doing a reorg. I'm doing a new technology drive, right? And I'm shifting out my whole ERP. Now, yes, there's a lot of technical, a lot of process, a lot of people aspects as part of that, strategy, visioning, and all that. But then they always leave change to the last piece of it. You put change plans together, you put some communication there. Yes, that helps. But if you don't execute on that in a very particular manner, you will start to get what I call the quiet disruption, right? It is people not wanting to do it. They won't actively say no or won't raise the flag and say, I'm not doing this. They will be very quiet about it, very subtle about, let me just not do it this way or let me just not do it that way. And then that builds and that builds. It's like this quiet resistance. And when you can, when you do that, and when you have people doing that, then change becomes harder. Then you're now fighting against a big tide of, well, we did this $1 million, multi-million dollar ERP. It's supposed to make life better. No one's using it. And it's because people have not been brought along that journey, have not been thought about, and change hasn't been thought about a capability or as a capability rather than it's let me just do this because we have to.
Yeah, it's funny. I said that in a previous podcast, which is like, tell me you love it, tell me you hate it. I don't really care. Just tell me
Tell
anything.
me something.
Because
Exactly.
the idea of not responding to change, like just saying, "Ah, it's okay, we'll just keep doing it the way we were before," just like ignoring it, is kind of tacitly saying, like, I don't think this change is rational because I don't think I have a real conversation about why this change is affecting me negatively or where I think that there might be an issue with the change. I don't think the stakeholders involved would listen. So instead of wasting my time, I'll say nothing and also do nothing.
Yeah.
That's
I
super scary.
Yeah, Neelesh, I do have a question because when I did org change management stuff, back in the last millennium, um, it was more about different types of people, and maybe it's a cultural thing, and people change over time. But way back when, it was more like the outspoken people, to say no, can't do this, that will never work, whatever, right? And the big goal was to identify those biggest distractors and then transform them to become your change agent, right? Because then the non-believers become the most committed believers over time. Has that changed? So do you see more of that silent, I don't know, resistance? What other part of people do you see? Because I think it's a spectrum, right? From the people who are very engaged to the people who are very openly opposed to it. What are those roles that you see? And if you're, while you're on it, where do you see the distribution?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So from and I can give two examples. We had one uh, big company, global, trying to change their end-to-end sales process, and from everywhere from APAC to the US, everything included. And we had another large F500 company looking to put a big operational excellence program in, brand new, never been done before. 120 person company or department. You know, we approached it the initial way that we approached it was we focused on exactly what you said, Roland. It is, who are the champions? We lean into them, right? Because there's always going to be the people that automatically love this, um, or love that change. It's needed. We need it. We should have done this 5 years ago. Let's go for it. Um, you're going to have the people on the other side of the spectrum that say, absolutely not. I don't have the time, the budget. I don't have the people. If they're, more senior leaders, we just went through some change. I'm not in for it again. I'm going to be a detractor. Many of the current change OCM frameworks and playbooks focus on turning those detractors, primarily focus on turning those detractors to champions. What gets lost is the people on the ground, the people, mid-senior, people actually doing the work. They're the ones that may not have the most influence. They're not the loudest voice in the room, but they're the ones that will make or break the change at the end of the day. Um, you can have, and we've seen this, put in a brand new system, brand new way of working for a contracting process, for example. We went through this, and it was shiny. It was a new tool. Everyone said, "Ooh, ah!" It was great. Tons of money spent in it. It had a 10% adoption rate in the beginning. Now, how do you turn something like that and say, "We spent all this money, my return is what? I got 10% adoption in the first 3 months." It wasn't the leaders, right? We followed the playbook. It was the people doing it on the ground. We didn't bring them along. And one of the biggest learnings I've seen is once you can get to that ground level, build the grassroots up, and at the same time, go from top down. When you meet in the middle, you have an amazing way to get, 70 to 90% of adoption on almost any work that you're doing. And I think to that one last point is, there's always this big statistic, right? 70% of transformations fail.
Mhm.
Um, it's never, well, it's not never, but it is largely due to the people, to the change muscle that most companies do not exercise in the right way, more than the process or the tool that is implemented.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree with that. What I also see, and maybe we're going to talk a little bit about this, is how genuine is the change approach, right? So I hope everybody has seen it, and I will put it in the show notes as well. Everybody has seen the change curve, the initial shock. How can they do that to us, And then the next step is, oh, we're going to do better. We're going to show it to them, stick it to the man, whatever. And then it goes down into that valley of tears, when you see, oh, damn, I can't do anything and whatever. And then slowly you climb up out of that valley, and you say, okay, maybe it's not too bad. Let's give it a try, and then, oh, it ain't too bad, let's see, and hopefully at some point in time you get to that new equilibrium that's higher than the old one and whatnot. Is that still a thing these days, or is it just the old man babbling about the 5 stages of grief?
No, it is still very much a thing, and we have done it. I've personally done this in the same way. People don't like change, right? And for whatever reason, and we can get into those reasons in a minute, but everyone will, what is change, right? It's your behavior. It's not just change. It's like change to change, right? It is a behavior. You are used to doing something in your personal life. Let's use the Blockbuster example. Before Netflix and all that, to watch a movie, you are so used to getting in your car, driving to Blockbuster, searching through that. And when Netflix came on, it was you get a DVD mailed to you. But wait a minute, what do I have to do? I don't have to rewind this. Do I have to put in the mail? How do I know it's gone back? Right? Making sure that it was returned versus I went to Blockbuster, physically handed a tape back in. Or DVD back in. So it's really about understanding people's reasoning for not changing. Not just it's that change. And then people go through emotions, right? If you don't track the emotional part of change and just say, oh, well, we just need to change the way things are done, you're going to lose people. And then you kind of get that dip, and then you're fighting the thing to get kind of back into your more equilibrium stage.
But the other thing about this is that change is consistent, right? Like you're always changing. So one of the things that I see a lot of organizations really struggle with is this idea that, when will it end? Right? Like when can we call change done? When the truth of the matter is that it really is never done. Like you'll always end up changing again. Like no company can stay consistent forever in any given state. It's the nature of business is an unstable position from which you try to grow. So the question is, how do you give people a sense of satisfaction in an ever moving change needle? And how do you make them feel like the change is meaningful or purposeful along the way?
Yeah, no. So this gets into kind of the heart of why I firmly believe when you follow a change playbook, you will not be successful, or you will have a lot harder time adopting that change.
Hmm.
Kind of disrupting the way that you're thinking about change is where this is needed. So you're right. If you if you sustain the way you're doing things, you will lose competitive edge. You will lose market share. You will lose those metrics that are very important to most organizations, right? You won't gain in where you need to be gaining. Your competitors will do that. But from a people perspective, we can call it change fatigue in essence. But the thing is, people will want and do want to always be better. In their personal lives, in their professional lives, there is always a need to be better than the next day or better than the day before. The thing is, if we even take our personal lives as an example, we are not changing every single day. We do not change every single minute. Um, on an average over a year, yes, you will have changed. You've gone on more vacations. You've done different things, right? But there is a time period where you relax, you celebrate what you've done in the first quarter, right? Personally, just even personally speaking. Um, most companies don't do that. And the key here is take that break, celebrate the win, celebrate it well, and celebrate it on time. So you have incremental change, celebrate it, right? Make people feel that they are part of it, that, hey, this is really cool. Even if it was small, it was impactful. You get major milestones, celebrate it, right? Once you get through where you feel that you have adopted, let's say, a big milestone, take a break, right? Let people think about, feel it, come down from the high, right? And then hop back into it, right? And then kind of remove, start with that change machine again. Because people and many leaders think about change, 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 change. Oh, if we're not changing, we're losing. That's true, but you have to do it in a specific way that allows people to breathe, allow people to understand, let it settle. Hey, we just spent a year in a big transformation. Year two cannot be, let's do another transformation. We win, we won, move forward, and we kind of relax and then kind of go from there.
Yeah. Which is very interesting because I've seen that in my lifetime, like, which doesn't mean I'm Methuselah old, but I've seen that where there was not the daily change, right? You got hired after your school, you stayed there, and then you retired, right? And in between, you have different jobs. So it's not so long ago. What I'm wondering is, and I think this is why org change management became that big topic, is the belief that we have to change on a daily basis. You have to do 10,000 steps and eat not more than 5 calories and blah, that the self-optimization stuff, right? That came in, and then that constant hustle for, oh, what's my sales quota? Did I make the quarterly numbers? Blah, 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 right? So I love that you say, hey, we need to take a break because, to be quite honest, and JM, you as a friend of Eastern worldviews will see that we live in seasons, right? So now it's spring while we record this, even though it rains. It's spring, right? We know there will be summer and we will do the fun things. We will go to the lake. We will take a camping trip, whatever. And then we're all looking forward because we're sweating like hell that it's fall and we enjoy the orange leaves. And then I go in my cave and don't show up for 3 months and sleep like a bear, and then it's spring again. I would love to see this back in business, right? To say, hey, it's not everybody is 100% all the time, right? By definition, not every day is your best day, right? And I think that's lost.
Right.
So I'm wondering, do you see a way, maybe not to go back to the static times 25 years ago or 30 years ago, but do you see a way that we will decelerate and we will come back to a more human pace in business?
To answer your question, the short way is no. I think we're going to continue to accelerate. But I think the important thing is how you approach the people within the organization. It's not necessarily about decelerating the change. It's about making sure that people understand why the change is, and that's not ringing hollow. That needs to ring true, right? It needs to be in the reality of their world. And if it just, we have this grand vision, it to me, that grand vision doesn't connect. If I'm not connecting with that, it doesn't work, right? I'm just gonna be like, well, that's their vision. I'm gonna keep doing what I'm doing. It's not gonna affect me, and I'm just gonna manage it as is. So we need to have that. And then we also need to be able to say is, hey, we went through this big change. Now let's figure out is what is coming up, right? Let's do a change audit, right? Let's train our managers to also talk to, understand what people are feeling, how people are feeling, right? And let's also figure out is um, what is the narrative that the organization feels, right? Narrative from the leadership is one thing. A mandate, we have to change. If we don't change, we're going to lose, market share. We're going to not hit our revenue. But again, that is from the not perspective, right? So we have to do this. But what does it mean from a if we do this, what will happen, right? What is the positive of that change? If we do this, your job will become this, right? Or it will become that, go from X to Y or A to B. And when you start to make it now about the people that this is impacting, then you start to develop, if you do it well, you'll develop the grassroots champion. Hey, this is really cool. I haven't done this before, and we can really, really make a difference to our patients, our students, our customers, whoever your end users are. And if you don't do it well, it's, well, I'm just not going to do it. And now you're fighting a tide, or now change or transformations fail. Right. And then you're like, oh, I spent all this money. What's going to happen? And then something else comes on and there's a bad taste in everybody's mouth. And then circle of life repeats there. So really thinking about why we're doing the change, understanding what needs to be done, and understanding if we don't do it, will it really, really be that impactful? Everyone has, everyone's hair is on fire every day. The question is, well, what's the actual priority, right? You can't do everything. It's only a finite period of time. You get burnout, right? Once you have burnout, you lose even more, right? Um, and so you need to think about this as a muscle, something you start, something, you practice, something you continuously work on, because it's never going to be hey, I had this transformation. It was successful. Awesome. Everyone celebrates. Great. We have this other transformation. I'm going to copy and paste the same thing. It could go completely off the rails. So you need to be
Yeah.
able to kind of adjust to the situation. And I don't think many organizations have a solid enough, robust enough change muscle to really
No.
drive positive change. Some do, and
Eh,
that's great,
good for them.
but some don't. When you move in a fast-paced world, everyone's like, we'll do that later. We'll do that later. We'll send out these big town hall, these big emails. No one cares, right? You want to
Yeah.
really connect with someone. Why are they doing this?
And it's funny, I think about this, I was almost thinking the opposite of what you were saying, which is I feel like a lot of change that I've been through, have seen, has been all on this promise of like, oh my God, all these amazing things are going to come in this magical future we're creating. And that lets people look back with rose-colored glasses on the past. Almost like there's like a resistance to admit or confront some of the issues with things that are happening right now because they're kind of a black mark on people's resume. Like, hey, like our order to cash process is pretty bad, and our customers are like complaining. There's some of them are leaving us, and we're going to do a big transformation in our systems. And the future world is everyone's going to click one button, everything's going to get done for you. But the real story is that today it's not working, and you and our customers are feeling the pain. And so this is a really important change to take away that pain. So like, let's confront the negative as well as talking about the positive, because I feel like a lot of times you get caught up in these promises, some of which don't come true. And so now you create a different type of change fatigue, which is trust fatigue. And that's the scariest fatigue of all from me. And I want to turn back to our audience here because I'm sure that a lot of you have been through tons of change in your organization for a bunch of different reasons. What's been the motivation that's been presented to you? How has leadership framed that change necessity, and how have they framed the future state that you're going to go to? Have you resisted this change or seen your colleagues resist this change? And how did you handle that together? We'll leave you for a moment and come back with our second section talking all about how we achieve change.
Yeah, welcome back. Hey, Neelesh, if you haven't noticed it, this is really one of my pet topics that I'm truly, truly, truly engaged in.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
One of the things that I noticed, though, is that people and I don't know if it's because they lack the experience or they lack the interpersonal skills or for whatever reason, see this as another management task. I have to pack my lunch at home. I have to drive to work. I need to do change management. Right. So, what are your experiences with so-called best practices?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So, the way that I've always approached change, especially when we're thinking about, regardless of whether we're doing small or big, the first question we always ask is w- how has change uh, been positive at your organization, and how has change been negative at your organization? If you don't understand that, you can have all the best practices in the world, and again, it comes back to you know. Uh, First principle design, right? It is what is it to your organization that will either make something successful or make something not successful.
May I interrupt? So, when you
Mhm.
say good change, bad change, are you talking objectively good? Oh, we made our numbers, we're growing, or bad if we don't? Or are you talking about the perception? Because
Both, actually.
objectively, you could crack the whip, right? And you run faster and you break the speed records for rowing, but the people are miserable. So which one is it?
So it has to be both, and this is where I think a lot of companies and leadership get stuck on. Get stuck on the KPIs, right? The objective change. Hey, we increased our sales by 10x. Awesome, the change was successful. But the problem is the behavioral, the emotional, the people side of the house, they went through turmoil to get to that point. And now they're exhausted. And now you say, you know, let's go back up the double diamond slope, right? For the skiers out there, it's you just finished one and you're saying, let's go right back. And people just are like, I need some time to just breathe, right? Let's actually use this. So my conversations with senior leaders have been one, time bound this change, first of all. At minimum, you need to say is look, this may be a 2-year change, 2-year transformation, but we're gonna take this in 6-month increments, right? We're gonna go hard for 6 months, maybe come off for 2 or 1 or whatever it is. Go hard for 6, come off for 1, right? Think when you're exercising, you never are at one pace for 45 minutes, right? It doesn't Your body gets used to it, and then it doesn't actually help you grow. So when you do HIIT training, high interval training, you're heavy, light, heavy, light, heavy, light. So same thing in change is you got to think about it is go heavy, get everyone excited, drive that, take a no, don't take a break, but lighten up, right? Maybe you don't have 100-person change team, you know, piece this out over your time period and but make sure that you don't when you time bound it, don't say 2 years and then 5 years down the line you're still changing. We're doing that same change, right? You need to make sure you can accomplish specifics in that period of time.
It sounds like you're also doing a lot of communicating here because you're listening to your people, but you're also trying to get the right message at the right time. Tell me how important it is to establish communities of listening, and tell me how communities of or communication channels play a key role in helping to actually live the sort of the breathing
Yeah.
motion you're talking about in a changed lifestyle.
Yeah, I think, Jamie, you touched upon this earlier, when we were talking about what not to do, what to do, how people are feeling to, kind of in the earlier part of this conversation.
Mhm.
Once you can do that, like, you can set up your communities of listening, have your champions run quarterly, monthly, depending on, how long your change is gonna be. Um, just times where people can come in and feel free to actually talk. No judgment zone, kind of a safe zone, if you wanna call it that way. Everything's anonymous, right? If you ask people to put their names on it, they'll give you the rosy colored picture of it.
We love it
Let it be
here.
anonymous. Things are great, and meanwhile they're like, I hate this thing, and they're going home and like, oh, this is so much. But giving people that space to express themselves. Um, whether it's a survey, those are very impersonal. You're not going to get much of a response out of it. I have not seen those be successful in any meaningful way. You get people together, note cards out, whiteboard it, whatever it is, right? Get people to kind of express their perspectives. You get much more out of them and more actionable feedback, which is super important. It's the action part of that feedback.
So you dove deeply, and of course this is the how part of our conversation. You took the bait, jammed throughout the bait. Oh, communication, and you took the bait, and you start. Isn't it? If I am a leader in an organization, what would be your first recommendation? What would be the first step? It wouldn't. I hope it's not the recommendation. Roland, go to the marketplace and start babbling how great everything is. Right? I'm pretty sure you would say, oh, take a step back and have a look at who you're dealing with. Or am I
Yeah.
mistaken?
No, you do need to know your audience, right? You need to know who is going to be a part of this. And you also need to, in your classic change management frameworks, you do a stakeholder influence map, right?
Mhm.
What is the influence of the group or the person compared to the impact the change is going to have on their job? Higher influence, higher impact. Obviously, you're going to spend a lot more time with them. Lower influence, lower impact. You're probably going to send more email type communication, things like that. So you do need to understand your audience, right? You can't just kind of go into the world and be like, okay, just tell me what's happening or tell me what's wrong. But the reason I dove deep into that and I took the bait was I have seen time and time and time again where leaders have said they have this grand vision. We get these town halls, we have these amazing emails, or we spend hours upon hours crafting the right word and the tone. And what happens? It falls flat. No one's understanding it. It goes in one ear, out the other. Then you start the change. And people are like, well, why are we doing this again? Well, didn't you listen to the town hall, the 100 emails?
Hmm.
No, I've been busy,
Nope.
right? So when you can create that judgment-free zone, that ability for people to provide their feedback, their perspectives, not just feedback. You have to make sure it's perspectives, which I think everyone kind of gets through feedback on the change. No. What is your perspective of the change, right? We got to treat this more human than we do today. And from there, you can then start taking that input, making sure that your narrative is again based in reality. Jam, you mentioned order to cash, as an example where everything, our customers are running away, this process, I've heard that so many times. But the thing is that when you do that, you get like people will get defensive. It's my problem. It's my problem. The leadership is saying that this thing sucks. I own it.
Uh-huh.
This is my territory. It's, I'm now going to point the finger, right? No, it's not me. It's them, And so you don't want that. That's what you want to try to avoid. You want to get people to say, including leadership, this process stinks, right? It's hurting you. It's hurting our customers. It's hurting us as a company, right? We know that it's not your fault because you're doing what you're supposed to be doing and how this was set up.
Mhm.
Now let's change it. What is your input to change it? How would you see this, right? Turn it to them. Obviously, you need to have leadership perspective, right? You can't just have this a willy-nilly thing. But when you can have these constructive conversations before you get into your actual change, which is important. Many
Yeah.
organizations jump into change and then ask for feedback. Before you get into the change, what do you want to see coming out of this?
That's a
Then
really
you
good
tie that
point.
into the reality of your organization, and then you disrupt the whole change playbook, right? And you figure out how you actually do something that will stick.
And that begs the question of sort of something you talked about before. which is from top to bottom and from bottom to top, and you meet in the middle somewhere, right? So the question is, I understand very well a leadership perspective, setting a new North Star, trying to build a better way of working, trying to achieve some of the targets that they've been set upon by their management and leadership. And I understand the bottom up perspective, which is sort of what do we do day to day to make this company work. The middle level, you talked about communication, but also influence. Um, how do we use that middle level to make the connection? I like to use the word the unbroken chain of influence between individual action and strategic outcome. But what are the people that you put in place, and what are the messages you equip them with, and sort of the practices you equip them with to be that interlock that makes it all kind of make sense?
You need to have the buy-in of your middle managers, and then your middle managers need to be able to train the folks below them. They need to be able
Mm,
to easily convey the message. This is why, this is how, this is the result. And many times it's top down, I'm dictating, we're going through the change. Or leaders say, I'm going to include my middle managers, but I'm telling them, and therefore you are now a mouthpiece to tell others. And that middle management layer doesn't believe in it, or they're not bought into it. And some are, obviously, I'm generalizing here. You'll have your spectrums, but when you have that, and this is goes back to the silent resistance. You cannot, if you have that, middle managers will then tend to say, "Oh, you know what? That's the new process. We don't really need to do that right now. Let's just continue to
mm,
do it here." Right? "Oh, we need more training on this. Let's hold off and let's do it the way that we've been doing it." Now, what does that do? That's not necessarily like, "I'm not doing this." It's just the easy way out, right? There's a car example. I mean, it's all about inertia, right? Physics. Body in motion will stay in motion unless something stops it, right? If you start to pump the brakes, you can get more control of your car, right? So change managers, leadership, need to not not run a playbook, but they need to kind of disrupt that inertia, slow it down, get back in control, and then kick up that inertia again. Kind of the
mhm.
off ramp, take the brake, on ramp again until your freeway. And freeway for those California folks or West Coast versus highway on the East Coast.
You mean the big traffic lot in LA
Yeah,
on the
exactly.
I-5?
Yeah, where's the change for that?
Yeah, that's very slow inertia over there. But that's the thing. Companies don't think about the inertia way of thinking. They're just like, we're gonna do it, and then we'll figure out everything later.
Are you saying that for the change managers, so the people who are tasked with implementing this? Or are you talking about the people in the organization that this gets done to? Because I'm thinking, you said it a little bit earlier. Oh, the managers, and now they refuse to do it and saying, yeah, the new stuff, never mind. What I'm thinking is, damn, they're people too. They're exhausted, you know? And now upper management comes and said, oh, by the way, Neelesh, I don't pay you more, but you need to do this too. Right? So how do you address that? Because I believe, with very, 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 very few exceptions, that people are good and people want to do the right thing. Right. So I also would assume that is true for leaders, right, or managers, and I make a slight distinction here. But the point is, I think they all have the good intentions and they want to do the right thing, but somehow they either can't because they can't remove that roadblock, or they have that internal roadblock that they're just tired, oh, another thing. So how, if, and I love, and unfortunately I have to take the steam from you. I love the quote that you have in our little cheat sheet here, where you say managers are the system, not the middle. Right. So how do
Yes.
you attack this? Because I think those roles are crucial.
100%. And, we can always talk about change in terms of playbooks and frameworks and, what works best and all these things. At the end of the day, it comes back to people. And Roland, you make a very good point. People generally are excited to want to be better, right? They're
Hmm.
generally good. They have the best of intentions. I have yet to meet someone that, in my 18 years of being with clients and being, um, with senior leaders and managers, people on the ground that say, I am absolutely not going to do this for, the best to the best of my ability. And you're right. There can be 100 different roadblocks internally. Oh, it's a little too much effort, right? What's the incentive? My company doesn't incentivize me to innovate. So why do I go above and beyond, right? I'm probably not going to get a bigger bonus if I innovate anything more. Um, but again, we have to bring it back to the person, right? You know, when I say change leaders, there still needs to be some accountability, right? Because if you kind of leave it to, it's kind of a if nobody does anything or it's everybody does something, nobody does anything. Um, and if you don't have that accountability, you lose it, right? So the question then becomes is how do you still bringing the right people at the change leadership team to manage that inertia, right? Slow it down, speed it up. You work through the specifics, but then why are the managers or the voice of the people, voice of the employees, right? People that are reporting up and those leaders, what is their perspective, right? Again, they need to be bought in. If you're telling nobody likes to be told what to do, right? Just in general, my 5-year-old son doesn't like to be told. We kind of give him options. We steer him to the right way or what we want. If we tell him, go do this, his answer is no. You know, as adults, it's the same thing. If you say, go do this, the answer is begrudgingly, I will do this because it's my job, but I will do no more than expected. But if you incentivize and have the right mindset, then it becomes hey, if I have this idea, right, that connects to a strategy, I'm going to proactively bring it up the chain. Right. And we did this at this large pharma is when we put this OpEx program in place, the first question we got was when we defined metrics. Um, are these metrics going to be part of my performance metrics at the end of the year?
I don't understand, and I'd like you to give me a little bit of your perspective on this, how you incentivize change leaders. So let's say you put incentives into your manager, the managers of the system, right? Around change. What do effective change focused incentives that we know incentive drives behavior, right? What do those incentives look like? And how do they correlate to the kinds of behaviors you need to see to make change effective?
Yeah. So obviously you have your kind of the top of mind is your financial incentives, right? If you, as change leaders, your goal is to have 2 to 3 successful changes, or, you can make up some metrics for that and you get a bonus, kind of like on the sales side, right? You sell X, you hit a threshold and all that. But I think what's more important from there is how are people, what is the feedback loop, even if it's anecdotal, of the change that's actually happening? And again, I don't think we all look at hard data, right? What is the metric? Is my data integrity really strong, or my errors in my data, things like that, right? We don't spend enough time as a society, as a culture, in business to say, what is the impact I've created across the people in the organization and the end user? You know, for example, just outside of the traditional industries, right? Pharma, big, financial services, et cetera, big tech. Let's think about continuous improvement at a school, right? In the academic educational system. There's always change, there are shrinking budgets, there is pressure to do more with less, but there is also this need to say you can't fail your students or your after school program where those kids really rely on what's happening. the social, the emotional aspect, right? The well-being of these kids is paramount. So when you're thinking about continuous improvement and change and really always trying to up level that next stage, again, what is the impact, right? Not just by a hard number, but like are these kids feeling the actual change? Are you just doing change to kind of cycle this through to show that you're working? Take that to the business side is our department, if you're more of the senior leader looking multiple departments, are departments becoming more um, self-reliant on internal change and now coming to the more senior executives bubbling up ideas for innovation, right? Or is it the other way around? If it's the other way around, then it becomes a slog. It's like I'm telling you, go do this, go use AI, right? Versus the ground up is, hey, look, I found a way to integrate AI, natural language processing, into my reporting. I've sped up my reporting by 50%, but I'm giving you better insights that lead to better actions. Innovation drives that. And then those are the ones that you bubble up, right? Now, amazingly, if you financially incentivize people, it's great. You gamify it, it's also pretty good. People love competition, right? No matter what. You got to be careful when you gamify it. There got to be a balance, but you gamify things, make it fun. People will change for the sake of change because it's interesting. But again, change leaders need to understand this, right? They need to really get deep into the psyche, the people. How is change really affecting the team, not just how is change affecting the bottom line?
And I think you're coming back around to the same idea, which is that you need to give people a reason, something that is reasonable and something that they can process and internalize to feel like they're part of the change in a meaningful way that
And that
is
it's not their fault.
relevant. Exactly.
You
It's
know,
not their fault,
it's not their
and
fault
that
that's
they
bad.
should want it. We
Right.
should all want this change, right? And I like that a lot. And I want to reflect this back to our audience because I'm sure that a lot of folks who are listening have been through changes like this. How have you seen communication and more importantly, influence be exerted and help to support this education, help to support bringing people together, help letting people understand what the change is going to be and make them feel like they're invested and involved in it. How have you seen that sort of middle management system work to your advantage? And where is something like that fallen apart? And what sort of consequences have you seen from that? We'll leave you for a moment to think about your experiences in effective change or not so effective change, and come back with our final thoughts and conclusions for the episode.
And welcome back. Hey, Neelesh, thanks. That was a very, very interesting conversation. And typically I do a summary at this point in the show, but there were so many ideas that I just say, guys, just listen again. So obviously we have the typical structure of the what and the how, right? But I think we deviated a little bit from our cheat sheet in a good way. So from my perspective, I think I just have one question left, and our regulars know which the question will be, which is, how can people reach you if they want to continue the conversation?
Yeah. Thank you for having me on. I really do appreciate your time and a lot of the listeners' time too. Feel free to reach me on LinkedIn. The link will be in the show notes. Neelesh Harmalker, and you can probably spell it in the show notes. Make it a little bit easier.
I will
Looking
do
forward to
that.
having future discussions. looking forward to having any future discussions, and happy to continue this conversation.
And that's a great segue to us continuing the conversation with you. Folks, it's been a great episode. Thank you so much, Neelesh. It was really great to get a chance to chat with you about this topic, and we're excited to talk even more with our fans online. So if you have a chance to give a comment or leave a like here on LinkedIn, or to go give us an email at hello@whatsyourbaseline.com. We'd love to keep hearing from our folks out there in podcast land who have joined us on this journey. And of course, if you'd like to find out more about this specific episode, you can go to whatsyourbaseline.com/episode 91. But until we hear from you again, or we see you in the next show, I've been J.M. Merlinson.
Neelesh Harmalker.
And my name is Roland Wold.
And we will see you in the next one.